All right, Jesse on Fire, welcome back to the channel. Now, I'm going to talk about Dustin Poirier's contract as it relates to the Conor McGregor fight. Okay, actually, this upcoming fight and the previous fight, because I found out a detail about a clause that was in his original bout agreement that led to this one, which is really crazy, man. Like, it's really crazy. I actually can't believe that his manager accepted this clause. But I'm also going to tell you how I know, because otherwise, why would you believe me? How would I have insight into this? I'm going to tell you how I know, and it's because I talked to one of Dustin Poirier's really, really good buddies this weekend. Now, in that same vein, I'm going to talk about the rest of my weekend because it also has to do with why I was on a hiatus and completely couldn't upload any videos. Normally, I would warn you guys, and also I wouldn't do a half-ass, sorry-ass UFC 263 fight companion, which is exactly what I did because I like doing fight companions, and it was infuriating that I didn't have a Wi-Fi connection, so I tried to do one on my phone. I had someone else in the room, and it was awful, okay? It was not a good fight companion, obviously. Anyone who's watched my real ones where I'm having my setup, much better than that one. That's why I deleted it immediately. But nonetheless, I'm going to tell you about my weekend. I'm going to tell you how I know about this Dustin Poirier contract, and you guys can chew on this little, contract detail because it's crazy, and this is right in my wheelhouse. This is the kind of thing exactly the kind of thing I like talking about on this channel. It's the business and all that stuff. So if you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell. Do it. Just do it, but only if you like it. But definitely like it or dislike it and comment on it because that's really helpful. Anyway, so in advance of the story, I know I talk a lot of trash on this channel, right? I say a lot of things. I'm playing a character most of the time. I'm not in this video. I'm just going to tell you guys what happened. But like when I go, I'm funny, I'm trying to be funny when I'm saying I'm being funny or whatever, okay? So I'm not trying to like big league anybody. This is just what my weekend was, and this is how I know, okay, about this contract clause. So I was at Rob O'Neill's house over the weekend, who is the Navy SEAL who shot and killed bin Laden. I was there all weekend, and he had terrible Wi-Fi connection because his house is so enormous and he's never there, so he doesn't even realize that the Wi-Fi doesn't even work in his guest wing, which is, anyway, it's neither here nor there. So the first night I watched UFC with one of the guys, and then the second day went golfing, and the whole time they're saying, then Rob flew back in. Now Rob was with a guy named Bob, right? Like he's at a Dave Chappelle show on Saturday in Ohio. He flew there with his wife, Bob, and Bob's wife on a private jet. Okay, so they're like, yeah, Bob will be, Rob will be back in the morning. He's with Bob and his wife. You're probably gonna go over to Bob's house later in the day. We're like, okay, cool. So we go golf. We have a great time. Me and the two other SEALs. And Rob gets back. We get done golfing. We go to the house. Now, okay, we're gonna go over to Bob's. It's like, cool. So we head over to Bob's. Bob is fucking Kid Rock. Okay, so Bob was Kid Rock. So I spent Sunday at Kid Rock's 5,000 acre ranch, which is one of the most. Have you ever seen the show on, the Kevin Costner show, the Montana one where he has all this land in Montana? That is Kid Rock's life. Like Kid Rock lives on a ranch just like that, okay? Except instead of like a horse, they have horses and stuff, but he has this enormous like recording studio, game room, all this stuff. It's one of the coolest places I've ever been. But anyway, so Kid Rock is very normal, very cool, etc. There was someone else there who is in kind of that Joe Rogan, Brendan Schaub, clique, very famous, very well known, and definitely a bulletproof, credible source when he says, I'm friends with Dustin Poirier, here are the details of his contract. Because he and I talked for a long time, and I didn't get his permission to quote him on the channel, so I'm not going to use his name, but I'm just demonstrating the total group, me, Rob O'Neill, two other Navy SEALs, this dude, and Rob O'Neill's wife and Kid Rock's wife. That's the total group that's there. Okay, so the guy is he's a well-known person is all I'm saying. He's definitely not lying. And he says, I'm good buddies with Dustin. Here's what was in the contract. So here's what he told me. Okay, so I'm obviously, the fight was the night before, so we were talking about the Nate Diaz fight and all that stuff, which, by the way, if Nate Diaz would have knocked Leon Edwards out, would have been probably the greatest moment in the history of the UFC. I might even do a whole other video on that. But yeah, so we were talking about that, and somehow we slipped over to Conor and Dustin, and I thought that I knew the details of that contract. Like, I thought that I knew that Dustin Poirier had gotten back end on the first fight. It was just like a small piece, and he had ended up making, I don't know, $1.5 or $2 million. I have no idea where I thought I knew that from, but I definitely thought that I knew for sure that those were the details of that contract, and I was apparently incorrect. He got no back end on the first fight, okay? That's not the big detail, okay? But he got apparently no back end on the first fight at all, which I think is pretty crazy, but apparently true. Now, everyone knows that he had this clause in the first bout agreement where if he beat Conor, he was going to get the rematch with the big numbers, like, with the big back end on the pay-per-view and all that stuff. Like, he stands to make an enormous amount of money on this next one. But here's the thing that no one knows, apparently. Well, I mean, a couple people know, but I certainly didn't know, so I don't know how anyone else would know. He had to knock Conor out, okay? To get the deal that he has for this one, he didn't just have to beat Conor. He had to knock him out, okay? Now, I validated this 8 different times. I'm like, wait, what? I was like, not just beat him, he had to knock him out. He's like, yes. And I was like, that doesn't even make sense. He's like, dude, I'm really good friends with Dustin Poirier. That's what it was. I'm like, why would his manager agree to that? He's like, I don't know, man. But that's what the deal was. Like, he had to knock him out. Like, he had to knock Conor out to get the deal that he has. Now, one thing I realized afterwards that I did not validate is that maybe there were like tiers to like what the rematch clause was. Like, if he beat him by decision, then he would have X of the back end or whatever kind of, whatever kind of financial arrangement with the UFC for the rematch. Because obviously if he beat Conor even by decision, they want to have, book him for the rematch. But I do know that the deal that he has, he had to knock Conor out to get. So the clause was if you win by knockout, then X. So again, and the first part is completely hypothetical. I have no idea if he even got like a piece of the back end if he won by decision. I have no idea. I'm telling you that this guy, very credible, extraordinarily credible, as it basically no different than if Joe Rogan told me, okay? It doesn't have to knock Conor out to get this bout agreement. It's like, and the reason why it's notable is just because I know that a lot of things that I talk about on this channel have to do with like, how people should handle negotiations and all that stuff. I mean, again, for the 100th time, like, I'm not pretending to be some surgical, MMA tactician when it comes to strategy inside the octagon or like surgical, application of martial arts, right? I mean, I can sit with any person in the world and have a very high level conversation about any fight that I'm watching. But not enough to where I'm like going to come on here and I'm going to say, hey, don't watch Dan Hardy break this fight down. You should listen to me as I go through film and kind of tell you what you should do. Obviously, that's a more credible source for that. But when it comes to the business, this is shit that I know. And I understand people and I understand kind of if you do this, then they're going to react this way. That's the kind of thing that I've always been really good at, which is why I like talking about that. But so as it relates to the UFC and why this is important, it's because it's part of like a broader way that the UFC does business with fighters, okay? Like, this part is true. Now, also GSP just put out this article where he was making millions of dollars every single fight once he got into his prime. And he said that prior to that, I think he said he made $9,000 for his fight against, he made $9,000 for his title shot against Matt Hughes. Now, this is a different era of the UFC. Obviously, they weren't profitable then. But nonetheless, he said that he had to threaten to leave to get the contract that he got, and then he ended up getting paid an enormous amount of money. Now, he almost fought his bouts out to where he had one fight left, and that's why they ended up paying him this enormous amount of money. But like we've talked about a million times, what does that equal? Right? Oh, I got one more fight. Nah, I don't think I'm going to sign. I think I'm going to leave the UFC. What is that? That's a credible threat, and that is leverage. Everything in negotiation comes down to leverage. Everything. Which is, again, why I constantly say, if you have 7 fights left on your deal and you just go on Twitter and you go, I'm not fighting unless they pay me, but you have no leverage, dude. You have no leverage. That is not a good way to negotiate. It's just not. And what you're doing is we've gone over that. But the point I'm making right now is I'm not saying not to negotiate with the UFC at all. Because the other point that I'm making is that the UFC does use these particular strategies to make people think they're signing up for more money than they actually are, right? The show, the this much to show, this much to win. That is a common sense tactic because, of course, you're dealing with for you to be a fighter that's good enough to fight in the UFC, you have to have a very specific mindset. Now, there are lots of different personalities in the UFC. All of them have one thing in common, okay? All of them are very confident, like gangsters, for lack of a better way to describe it. And so if you put a kind of person who gets in the UFC And they have to have been chasing a dream their whole life. And this narrative they've been telling themselves is they're headed for the top. And you say, okay, look, so you're going to get 50 to show, 50 to win. How many of them are going to go, okay, well, I'll get 50 to show and then I'll lose? None. None of them are going to do that, right? But guess what? One of them is going to lose every single time. So everyone thinks they're signing up for their show and win money, when in reality, only one of them is signing up for that. It's a smart tactic from a business perspective. I personally, if I was in the UFC, would very much be trying to drive towards get out of here with that show and win thing. Like, this is pay me flat. You think that money is going to motivate me to fight more? Like, if the because the reason they'll say that is, oh, well, we want you, we just want to motivate guys to fight more, and be like, you really think that that money is why I'm doing this? I mean, yeah, sure, I want to make money, but you think that I need extra motivation to win? I'm going to go and die in the octagon 100% of the time, regardless of what the money is. All that is setting me up to get double kicked in the balls if I lose. Like, if in the event that I pour my heart out, I train forever, I get in there and I fight my hardest and I lose, not only do I have the soul crushing moment of defeat, but I also then go home to my family and go, oh, by the way, I made half the money. Like, I personally would negotiate incredibly hard against that if it was me. But it's what they do. And apparently in Dustin Poirier's case, they dangled this enormous payday in front of him, but he had to knock Conor out to get it. And then he did. It's pretty gangster, man. It is pretty gangster. So I have no idea I don't really know the finer details of this one, other than that I know for sure he's getting a big piece of the pay-per-view, and he had to knock Conor out to get the deal that he has now, which is awesome. And yeah, also Kid Rock is very cool. Very normal, extraordinarily normal, and I got to listen to his upcoming album in his studio with him performing it, which was one of the most surreal things in my entire life. And his first single, at least the one that he told us was going to be his first single, is going to melt your face. Straight up. It's going to break, like, if assuming that the radio will play it, because, I don't know, it might not be, it doesn't shy away from the culture war, let's just say that. And, assuming that the radio plays it, that thing is going to the moon. But anyway, I had quite the weekend. I apologize for the lack of uploads, and that is a little tidbit of information for everyone that I found interesting. I love you guys very much, and look for many more videos this week. Peace.